His skin is white just like a ghost, thick Irish roots and his blonde hair. And he sounds like a Chicago superfan, a music nerd with a collection of CDs from here to there. Yes, Andy Dare is in Chicago, interviewing and barbecuing. It's the Andy Dare Show. It's the Andy Dare Show.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for checking out the Andy Dare Show. This is episode 77. I'm joined by a real cool dude, Steve Fisk, a musician, producer extraordinaire. He has been in bands such as Pigeon Head, Halo Benders, Pell Mel. He's also worked in the studio with such awesome bands as Screaming Trees, Soundgarden, Soul Coughing, Nirvana, whole bunch of cool names. Real nice guy, real down to earth, knows a ton about the business. But before we get into this awesome interview, I want to bring up my awesome sponsors for this episode. First off, we have Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue in gorgeous Westmont, Illinois. They are the real deal barbecue, family-owned and operated for 15 years, since 1997. This is a really great restaurant. Check them out. If you have a free Friday night, you want to bring the kids out. They're really only about 20 minutes away from the city of Chicago. It's worth the drive for the real deal barbecue. They have smokers attached to the building, pumping out delicious hickory smoked barbecue 24/7, 365. And yes, try their beef brisket, their pulled pork, their baby back ribs, homemade side dishes, fried catfish dinner. It's just the real good American fare cooked with love. And so that is Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue, located at 132 South Cass in Westmont, Illinois. Give them a call. They're 630-493-9000. What people don't know is that they're also a full-service catering company. If you're looking to put a wedding on, or just a pig roast, a luau, a corporate event, a company picnic, if you just want to have them deliver lunch for your company, they'll do it. They have smokers they can bring out to the site. They also have grills. They have barbecue experts. They have grills that will put on the buffet for you. Make sure your party goes off without a hitch so you can relax and enjoy yourself. Call today for catering for this summer. Once again, 630-493-9000, and on the web at UncleBubs.com. And by Secondhand Mall, also in Westmont, Illinois, keeping my sponsors local. As many people who listen to the show know, my record store of 28 years. Remember when Records recently closed its doors when the owner retired, and they sold out the existing inventory to Secondhand Mall. So that's located at 309 West Ogden Avenue. Give them a call at 630-810-9980 if you want to turn that stack of CDs in your closet into some spending change. Why not check out Secondhand Mall? So now, besides the huge selection of vinyl, they now also have vintage music gear. They have computer gear, video games, accessories, power tools, a whole bunch of good stuff. Remember when you wanted to go to a store and just hang out and also buy stuff? This is what Secondhand Mall is, and I'm proud to name them as a sponsor. Also, check out their beautiful new ad in the Illinois Entertainer this month. And by Amazon.com. Yeah, a little mom-and-pop shop called Amazon.com. All you got to do is go to the AndyDareShow.com and go to the right-hand side of the page, click through the banner. You spend $0 extra. You spend about 2 extra seconds, and you get to support the Andy Dare Show, my little creative endeavor that's been going on for 2 years now. Yes, we've had a lot of people support the show, and it means a whole lot to me. We've had an iPod, we've had an Amazon Kindle, we've had sunglasses, we've had MP3 albums. It means a lot to me that you guys are enjoying the show, enjoying the great content that we can deliver to you. We can only keep delivering it to you if you support our sponsors, and we appreciate everybody who has. So thank you so much. That about does it for our sponsors this week. What's going on in the world of Andy Dare now? We are about to celebrate our 2nd anniversary. And, we're going to be doing another best of show with the best shows of year 2. That should be coming out next week. I want to thank everybody who enjoyed our interviews with David Markey from We Got Power Films and Gary Smith from Corolla Digital. really excited about this next interview I got with Steve Fisk. I hope you enjoy it. I myself learned a ton already. And, Steve's a real nice guy, really educated me on the whole scene. Just really love learning more about music. That's why I do this show. I want to thank you for, letting us keep the lights on here at the Honeycomb Hideout Studios a little bit longer and keep bringing you awesome shows. Also, to everybody who has supported us by purchasing our new MP3 album called Transmissions from the Honeycomb Hideout. That is the name of my studio, and yes, we have a little compilation album for sale at Bandcamp. Our site is andydareshow.bandcamp.com, and there you can purchase Transmissions from the Honeycomb Hideout for a measly $5 at Bandcamp, and you download it instantly. It's got awesome bits from Matt Fondelier, Lynette Carolla, Allison Rosen, Matt Mahaffey, Paul Gilmartin. It's a mixture of comedy, music, and actual songs that I sing and play myself. So it's just an interesting little thing. We're going to be working on a new album. It should be out March or April. And yeah, thanks for supporting. So that about does it. I would love to introduce you to my episode 77 interview with Steve Fisk.
Hello.
Hey, Steve, you're on the Andy Dare Show. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
Hey, great. Thanks for taking the time out. How does this Friday find you?
In between meetings. But good meetings.
Oh, they're good meetings. Good. They're nothing that you're dreading going to?
No. It's all fun stuff.
All fun stuff. Awesome.
Projects right now.
Cool. What kind of stuff you got coming down the pipeline?
A new Pigeon Head record.
Awesome.
And I'm also producing a record for a really interesting young band from Kelso called the Sea Cats. That's Sea Cats, S-E-A-C-A-T-S. And it's a couple of brothers that have been working together for years, although they're still very young. And have a very interesting kind of pop-punk approach to their writing and their recording, and that's been a gas. Just finished tracking a record, and I'm going to get to mixing it here in the next few days.
That's awesome. So do you work out of a home studio, or do you go into another studio to work?
Both. I usually track in another studio and then finish at the facility I have at my house.
That's awesome. Do you like the days that we're in now, where a lot of the stuff you can do just within your house, or do you yearn for the days of old when you had to, get everything together and have it be perfect and then go to the studio?
Well, the kind of stuff I worked on was never perfect when I went to the studio.
Sure.
All kinds of things got worked out in the studio. I think it's very sad to see all of the old-fashioned studios closing, and I think there is a sonic price to pay as a society that we have yet to even begin to figure out exactly what that's going to cost. But I certainly enjoy owning my own gear and being able to, control the economics with the people I work with and be able to cut deals for people and to be able to do things for, laughs or what have you. And I think having something next to where you live, you can't help but get good at it. I would much rather be good at working hundreds of different places than really good at working in one place.
Yeah, I see how that would be beneficial. But yeah, like Neil Young, I'm reading his new book, and he's talking about his new form of audio that he's trying to release. He says MP3s really give you about 10% of all the information that comes off a vinyl record. Do you feel the loss of audio fidelity and getting stuff off iTunes, getting stuff downloaded? Do you wish it was back to the vinyl sound, or do you think it's good enough the way it is? And it's a hard place where we're at now, where you can't, an MP3 is just a snapshot of a brilliant painting of a piece of vinyl is what I think he's meaning.
Well, vinyl is a nice thing, and I'm glad it hasn't gone away. But I think CDs sound really great, and the thing of it is that our computers are now smart enough, our phones are now smart enough that we could actually be dealing with something much higher fidelity than MP3s, but we're not, and so I don't really know how it's going to turn out. But I think your listeners have to start paying for music. I think that's going to have to change.
Definitely, I agree.
I'm just guessing that most of the people out there aren't, and that's how a generation has, learned to really love music and all of that. But, once again, there's a piper to pay here. I think as these higher resolution formats become available, or these more things we judge sonically superior codecs, because we're basically just talking about codecs.
Sure.
Except, even a CD is a codec to a certain extent. Then it's going to be like water. People drink tap water out of the sink, but if you want to get some water that you'd rather have with a nice meal, you're going to pay money for it. So it'll be a class thing again, where people with out a lot of money will be stuck listening to less than ideal audio, and people with a little bit of bread will throw out money for nicer sounding stuff.
Yeah, well put. I like that. I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I agree with the CD thing. I came up in the early 90s, so I just have a wall full of thousands of CDs, and it's the perfect in-between of it's easy to take around. It's definitely pretty much easier to use than vinyl, but the sound quality was still there, and the sound quality is high on CDs. So I'm kind of in that middle ground where my favorite stuff I still need on compact disc, but I can definitely feel the winds of change now. Best Buy turning their CD selection into pretty much just tiny little racks now, and it's almost like smokers in restaurants they get pushed to one section, then they got pushed out of the restaurant, and I feel that is coming for compact discs in the next 2 to 3 years. I have a feeling. So
yeah, perhaps some people don't know about the giant stuff that just went wrong in England last week, but we just launched HMV, which is carried probably 40% of the country's CDs and vinyl and what have you, and then also another website that was the UK equivalent of Amazon went under.
Who is that?
I think they were playuk.com or something. It's in all the articles. It happened within the same week. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's definitely a wind of change happening now. But yeah, so are you going to be you got stevefisk.com, but that's going to be relaunching, correct?
Sometime in the near future, yes.
Going to do that along with the Pigeon Head album or something?
Yeah. That's all. That's the first 45 from the Pigeon Head record drops in April, and I imagine the LP will be out either in the fall or midsummer. But there's going to be 2 singles at least, and
cool.
And we're doing this with a wonderful local label here in town, Finn Records, and they do very wonderful vinyl, very high res, very cool stuff, as well as the other formats.
Hey, what town are you out of, if you mind me asking?
Seattle, Washington.
Nice. Yeah, I just got to take a trip up to the Pacific Northwest, hit up Portland, and made a trip out to Aberdeen just because of 20 years for Nevermind. And yeah, it was just a real cool feeling. I'd like to come back there and definitely check out Seattle soon. So,
did you visit the Experience Music Project?
No, I didn't. I actually just went to Aberdeen and just checked under the Yonge Street Bridge. That we only had about an hour of time, so I just went. I asked all the local people about if there was a nice memorial and stuff. A lot of people didn't even have any clue, and it was a Sunday, so we couldn't get into there. But yeah, we Googled it and came up with this bridge, and it was actually kind of an eerie memorial. You could definitely feel something going on there. And yeah, it's definitely better than being in a stuffy, a museum. I got to go underneath the bridge and check out all the fan art. That was cool. So.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you had a great moment spelunking our tribal history up here. I suppose that's more fun than going to the house out in Madrona. Yeah,
and yeah, so the stevefisk.com right now it leaks to your Facebook. How do you feel about the social media whole zeitgeist of year 2010 plus? It's kind of a necessary evil. But I do find that, you put something out there and you get a bunch of comments. You get to, converse back and forth with people that you would never in a million years be able to talk to. So I definitely see the cool things about it. How about you?
Well, it doesn't look or act the way I would want something like that to look or act, but I appreciate it, and I, stay in contact with a lot of friends and a lot of musicians and people I've worked with. That was one of the first things that happened with MySpace. Is immediately musicians that I'd recorded throughout the '90s that I lost touch with, I could immediately get a hold of them, and that was really cool. It was like some magic phone book or something like that.
Yeah. Cool.
So I don't have a lot of big complaints about that. I know that there are a lot of valid criticisms of the privacy issues and some of the liberties these guys take and all of that. But I, for one, have never been surprised that the internet is impossible to control or regulate.
Sure.
It's been that way for me from the beginning, and I don't see any hope of it in the near future. And so, what happens with social media and all of this, there's good times to be alive and bad times to be alive. I think this is a good time to be alive.
Yeah, I think it's good too. And as far as the privacy issues thing, you don't have to take a picture of your address or take a picture of your young kids. I just use it pretty much as a networking thing to get ears onto my show. I mean, it's mostly a business thing. I'm not taking a picture of what I ate for lunch.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think all kinds of things are going to sort themselves out. I don't think we're going to keep talking into computers. I think that phones are going to go back to being phones, and they're going to be primarily an audio experience. And if somebody wants to have a Kindle or an iPhone around for doing some heavy internet action, that's great. But I think this idea of this glass thing that you hold up to your face, it'll be over with probably in 50 years or sooner. And that what people do with phones is going to be what they always done with phones. It's going to be a speaker and some buttons and a thing that sits on your ear.
Going to go full circle, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and that's fine, but it's all shit that's getting worked out. Like
yeah, definitely. We're right in the middle of it, kind of.
When I was a kid, it was, the cassette was a new thing.
Yep. And people were pirating music onto their cassettes, and right.
Well, and pressing pirate vinyl, which never sounded any good, by the way.
No. All right, yeah, I'd like to take it back. What kind of, your first musical memory, or were your parents very supportive of being a musician, or was it kind of like get a real job, become a lawyer or something? I don't know.
A combination of both. They never saw any great future in me being a musician, but they understood it was something that I was, and they were very, very supportive of it. And they were both school teachers, so you didn't have to sell them on why a child should be playing music or something like that. So they were very supportive, but my dad especially was like, always know how to make breakfast, Steve, because people will always want breakfast. It was like wherever you end up, you can always be a cook or something like that.
Sure, yeah. That's what I do on the side.
I
was
very lucky in that regard. I mean, I had music lessons and learned how to play several instruments in a half-ass way before I settled on keyboards and got good at that.
What kind of guy were you in high school? Were you doing the whole garage band thing?
Yeah. I was in, would have been, 73, 74. So that's when people were, English blues-based, garbage and, lots of long jams and people destroying their hearing at a young age. And,
sure.
And yeah, basically the John Spencer Blues explosion, except
nice.
They were doing it in 1972.
A lot of facial hair, right? Yeah.
Yeah. In Southern California, so it was Levi's and T-shirts and Marshall amplifiers in parks and.
Cool.
It's interesting. I did play in a band for a short period of time with the guitar player from Dawkins. And
really?
After that, I played in another short-lived, not even really a band, just some guys that hung out with Dave from the Blasters, Dave Alvin. So
nice.
It's funny. I left L.A. sort of thinking nobody from here's going to make it. These are all in place, and then ultimately time proved me wrong.
So how long were you in California until?
Oh, I grew up, like I said, Lakewood, and I think I left when I was 19, and then came back for a year, and then left again for good.
Did the
and
whole
Washington for a couple of different reasons.
Nice. Did the whole punk wave hit you pretty hard, or was it more like, yeah, I still like good like a musicianship and instrumentation and stuff like that?
Well, gee, that's a loaded question.
Or it could be a combination,
Well, yeah, I have a pretty rich punk rock history, and if you go digging around on the internet, you can find lots of examples of it on YouTube. But I was on a Dead Kennedys compilation in 1980 called "Let Them Eat Jelly Beans" with Black Flag and the Feeders and
Nice.
the Minutemen and on and on and on. So I would have to say I was an early adopter or a secondary adopter as opposed to an innovator. But I by that point I was going to the Evergreen State College, which was
Is that with
home
K?
to a
K Records, right?
K didn't exist at the time.
Oh no.
But that's where Sub Pop started. A lot of people don't know that. And actually, the guy that started Sub Pop was somebody I went to college with, and we generated a lot of interesting media, magazines, and fanzines, and some music out of Olympia. But more than that, we were in tune with what was going on in England and what was going on in New York, and also connected to a lot of the second cities. There's one publication called Pop magazine, and once again, this is all history for the kids. But before there was K, there was Sub Pop, and before there was Sub Pop, there was Op. And Op is a survey of all music, so it included punk rock in there, but it was all run by punk rock librarians that were trying to spread the word of how you can make your own records, how you can distribute your own records. So every single issue had lists of radio stations that would play your stuff, and pressing plants would press your stuff, and other magazines you could send your stuff to. So it was kind of a pre-internet idea.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, that started right there in the bowels of the Evergreen State College. This guy John Foster and Stephen Raybo and about 7 or 8 other very forward-minded people made that happen. And I was, one of the heavy lifters. I did some of the stupid work for it. I didn't come up with the good ideas, but I helped them kind of work out some of the stuff. And I think that probably radicalized me to a certain extent, and is still with me today. So, and that's why Bruce Babbitt came to Olympia. Bruce was from Chicago. So to start Sub Pop, he was looking for someplace way outside of where he grew up, and thought that what was going on in Olympia was, very, very cool. So between, Bruce and Calvin and, some other people I could name check, it was a hotbed of punk rock.
And then you got roots with SST, right? And Ginn, or
what was the question about SST?
You also got roots working with SST and Greg Ginn at that same era, or was that a different era?
No, that was all years later. That was mid '80s by that point.
Oh,
to me, like a long time. The difference between 1979 and 1986 was about 20 years.
Nice.
And by that point, punk rock was dead, and independent music had changed pretty radically, and the majors had co-opted the bands that they wanted, and a lot of that hadn't worked out either. And there really wasn't a big band on a major label from the independent world at all in the mid '80s. I mean, REM was about it.
That's it.
So this third act, the SST world, and the next wave of suburban inspired, punk rock and blues and all of that. That was I ended up completely by accident living in a small town where the Screaming Trees were coming together, and ended up recording some of their stuff. And through them, I connected them with some of my friends through some other musical contacts, and they hooked them up with SST. And so I went from putting out some of the first Screaming Trees records to recording them for SST.
Nice. That is awesome.
But we have to name check some people. This was Ellensburg, Washington. This is a small town that people little know or care about. But this good friend of mine, Sam Albright, somebody I went to college with, had built a recording studio there and started a record label and did all this crazy stuff.
That's incredible. So you got to take Screaming Trees to SST, and you recorded what, 3 full lengths for them?
I think I think it's 4.5. I might have that wrong, but there were some things that never came out. There was the Other Worlds EP first, which was a cassette that later became, a record, and there's Clairvoyance, which a lot of people don't know anything about, but that was the one album we put out on the Ellensburg label, Velvet Tone.
Yeah, they're so tough to find, those. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got some kind of incomer here. I'll just wait.
No problem. Yeah, I'll cut it out.
But anyway, so yeah, Ellensburg was pretty complicated in its way as well, and that's where I started recording Beat Happening and Girl Trouble and a lot of other interesting bands that would bother to drive over there from Seattle or Olympia. And
I'm looking at the cover of Jamboree right now in front of me, and yeah, it had to be weird recording that one with Mark from Screaming Trees. And what kind of guy was Calvin to be working with in the studio? It seems pretty loose and fun, right?
No, there were
No?
fun moments, but Beat Happening were very, very serious about what they were doing, and actually I'd recorded Calvin since his first times in the studio in 1979, 1980. When he was 15, 16 years old. So I by the time I was recording the Beat Happening records, I kind of, knew
what he wanted.
Kind of, yeah. Well, and also, a lot of it was listening to them, and getting them what they wanted, because they had a very unique aesthetic they were trying to make happen. It wasn't really like other bands.
Sure.
Everybody, before the White Stripes, not having a bass player was very weird.
Sure.
Before the KIAs, not having a bass player was very, very weird.
Now it's hip.
And, yeah, exactly.
Very cool. And how about some of the stuff that you recorded for like your own bands? Like you started with Pell Mel, right? And they were SST, but they were totally their own style.
I joined Pell Mel when they were in full,
full swing.
Form, and Bruce Pavitt actually was their manager. Bruce introduced me to Pell Mel, and Pell Mel were on all the old Sub Pop cassettes, and Pell Mel were based in Portland but had just moved us to San Francisco, so I joined them in San Francisco and was part of that version of Pell Mel, and that broke up in '86, and we still kept recording, and then kind of did some interesting things in the '90s, and ended up on Geffen for a record, and some other crazy stuff. Like a lot of people in the '90s, they ended up on Geffen for a record. It was
sure. You get your one Geffen record in the '90s, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No. Hey, it was great. I loved it. I had a great time. It was a good record.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, but Pell Mel, for not really living in the same city, managed to stay semi-active for about 18 years, starting in 1980, and I was part of 15 years of that history.
What were like the roots for an instrumental band at that time? You didn't really have a lot of blueprints to work with. I mean, now you have Slint and stuff like that, but back then there wasn't stuff that you say, oh yeah, that amazing instrumental band from the '70s. There wasn't that many. I mean, right?
No. I mean, the Meters were part of it.
Sure.
I mean, there was a big punk rock influence on Pell Mel, but it was things like the Feelies,
Oh yeah.
Or Wire or something. So they were sonically inspired by bands with vocals, but they made it instrumental music. And I wasn't the world's biggest Pell Mel fan, but they were one of my favorite bands way before I joined the group. And I loved that first EP they put out, and some other recordings I'd heard. So yeah, they definitely had their finger on something. It was like definitely always like an art rock thing. They were trying to do rock in a postmodern way. They were trying to screw it up a little bit and refer to a lot of things without really spelling them out. And then lots of people thought Pell Mel was like a surf band. Oh, guitar instrumentals. And at the very same time, there was a band that was probably 10 times bigger than Pell Mel called the Ray Beats, which was born out of the New York art scene. James White and the Blacks and Arnold Lindsay and
nice, yeah,
the Conversions and Lydia Lunch. And the Ray Beats were like a amazing kind of tongue-in-cheek surf band with like raging guitar solos. And, just like Dick Dale or something, where Pell Mel was like, like Philip Glass.
More like No Wave, yeah.
Again, 20 minutes,
Steve Reich, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And like, how about the first? What was the seed that started Pigeon Head? Was that more of like a? Was that with the guys with Brad and Satchel and stuff?
Well, there's actually only one guy. It's John Smith, and Sean and I were neighbors when I first moved to Seattle, and I got to record some of his solo music, and we were friends that way. And I don't know what kind of music you get to play on this show, but you definitely should play something from the Jesse Bernstein record. A very interesting performance artist poet that I ended up doing some scoring and some production work on. And the Jesse Bernstein story is way too complicated to get into here, but anybody willing to look up Stephen Jesse Bernstein, there's a documentary called I Am Secretly an Important Man. He's kind of Seattle's Bukowski or Seattle's Burroughs or something. And I did lots of hip-hop loops and lots of gigantic, thundering, drum and bass kind of things, for the time, which was, 1991 or something. And some people thought that Pigeon Head invented trip-hop. I think we ended up doing a lot of slow, moody, kind of stripped down funk pieces at the same time that all the trip hop stuff was coming at it. But yeah, the Bernstein record kind of turned Sean on to what I could do, on my own, putting loops together. And he and I spent a summer kind of playing with loops and samples and doing a lot of abstract stuff with vocals. And that was the first Pigeon Head record. And then yeah, he was in several other bands, and Pigeon Head managed to sort of fit in between, his schedule and the things I was doing with Pell Mel and things as a record producer. And we kind of got rolling as something fun to do when we weren't doing other things. And definitely, Prince, giant influence. Stevie Wonder was a giant influence,
Sure.
When people point that out, we're never like, oops, you found us out. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's exactly what we're doing.
That's right there, yeah. Nice. And what was it like completely out of the blue when you guys pretty much had a hit with, Battle Flag with Low Fidelity Allstars remixing it in, 98?
Well, there was a whole record full of remixes, and they all got promoted to a greater or lesser degree, and that one happened to catch, so we were quite surprised by it. But at the same time, there's a Pigeon Head remix record. There's all remixes of a Full Sentence record, and Red Snapper and Dave Lowry and all kinds of interesting people did remix for us.
Cool.
And we specifically had an A&R at the time that knew a lot of up-and-coming DJs and remixers, and the drum and bass thing that was breaking open about that point. So I guess the Low Fidelity Allstars, they were a very, aggressive band and very adventurous, and I think, we caught on kind of, their thing, and the song blew up that way. But it's all been good,
Nice. You kind of helped each other, because I had never heard of that band before. I'd heard of Pigeon Head, but I had never heard of Low Fidelity Allstars, so it kind of put them on the map as well, it seems like.
Well, yeah, it goes back and forth.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about music,
What I love is all the Battle Flag covers you can find on YouTube.
Huh, really?
Yeah, there's covers, and then people making their own homemade videos with Battle Flag. It's some song that hits some kind of resonant point with somebody, so if somebody needs to put some music in behind, their weekend with, homemade hot rods, they'll throw in Pigeon Head. If they're having a party, and they want to cut party footage together, they'll throw on Pigeon Head or whatever. It's pretty funny.
It is a party starter, and I remember hearing that song and just saying, wow, this blasts me back to that whole Manchester scene of, Primal Scream and the Charlatans and, stuff like that, which I liked a lot. And it seemed like the 90s at that point there, we had a lot of that new wave electronica stuff, but nothing that was really a party starter. And that one was definitely a party starter and it had a lot of life. But yeah, I've only got a couple.
Like a Manchester track, like a mid-'80s Manchester track.
Yeah, Manchester was that was an awesome era as far as just melding the dance music with, the ecstasy scene and stuff like that. It seemed like it would have been a really cool time to be, about 21 in 1988, about that time, so. But yeah, I've just got a couple more questions. I don't want to keep you too much longer here. But what can we expect from like the new Pigeon Head? Are you going to be all full of samples? Or are we going to try to do a live band sound? How is there any changes that will be, huge changes, or what's the deal?
Well, it's still primarily Sean and me. If you go to YouTube, you can find footage of the current live Pigeon Head band, which gets activated periodically, and we have some amazing local musicians from Moktube and a few other bands that play with us when we play live. But in the studio, it's me and Sean, and it's probably more like the full sentence than the first Pigeon Head record, but
sure,
there's no samples, and there never really were. There just was a lot of things being sampled, but there never really were a lot of samples in Pigeon Head records. The vocal work is a lot more sophisticated.
Nice.
Not saying the other stuff wasn't, but the work on Full Sentence is probably the most elaborate stuff he's done with Pigeon Head. This is kind of twice as complicated. so there might be 5 vocal tracks making up a chorus, and 2 vocal tracks making up a verse, and then some kind of freestyle thing that happens in between that. So he's really done some great vocal work. The stuff is still hella funky, still kind of lives in the early Prince world, and yeah, we're kind of stoked about it. But Pigeon Head is very much a two-way street. Some tracks Sean plays keyboards and sings, and I do all the programming, and some songs Sean brings up fully together, and I just end up mixing it. And some songs come in with based on some rhythm machine thing that Sean starts or something like that. So they all come together different ways, but it's still just basically us, as far as the studio goes, and yeah, home studio. Yes.
Nice.
Having your home studio and something solid that doesn't sound crappy, and that's very good for Pigeon Head. So.
How about this? A producer that you would work with if you just wanted to relax and leave it to some other guy behind the boards?
Well, I've done this once, and I do it again in a second. I love working with Chad Blake. He's one of my favorite sonic architecturalists, and has really great ideas and all of that. But Chad, you might know from the Los Lobos records and Bonnie Raitt and.
Oh yeah, Chad with a T, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Okay, well, I think we're gonna end it here. I just got one more thing. I did this with Steve Albini at his electrical audio studio. I'm just gonna mention a band, and you give me like a one sentence. Just wrap up your experience with them.
Okay, I may have to say next.
Okay, feel free to say next if you like. How about Soul Coughing?
I had a wonderful time. They were great. If you go read the books, you can see that there was a giant fight going on, but they were just amazing in the studio. Just a totally wonderful band. I know that's one sentence, but that's a loaded one.
Cool. How about the Geraldine Fibbers?
I feel so lucky to work with bands like that. I was lucky. Let me start that again. I was very lucky to be able to do 2 records with them. They are in the top 5% of anybody I've ever worked with. Geraldine Fibbers are amazing.
Nice. How about the Posies?
I got to work with the Posies when they were being encouraged to rethink things, and I think it was a bad time for the Posies. That being said, we I think did some really great work together, and I think it was only 2 songs. One was a mix, one was something from scratch, but I had a great time with the Posies. Those were fun. I hate to be so positive.
No problem.
But that record isn't the best Posies record. That was a record that Geffen fucked up for me.
Gotcha, understood. How about Soundgarden? And which one did you do by them?
I did the FOP EP.
Oh, I gotcha. The first thing, right?
I did a remix for Big Dumb Sex, and did a remix for Spoon Man. So I did, and I did a remix for FOP. So not a lot of tracking, lots of remixing. they were great. They were really fun to work with too. I didn't realize I was going to be getting into long, crazy philosophical arguments about how things are recorded, but that's a little bit of what the band does in general, and specifically what good old Kim Kyle does. He's
nice.
Well, why are we doing it this way? And why is it done this way? And my speaker is this big, and yet the playback speaker is that big. So what?
He breaks it all down, and yeah. Surveys the remains.
It slows it down a little bit, but it's an interesting way to go at recording for sure.
Nice. That's a beautiful way to end this. Just want to thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time out. Go to stevefisk.com. It'll lead to his Facebook. I guess you can like him on Facebook, I guess. Any other pages?
As a public figure that people are welcome to like.
Nice. Sounds good. And any last words?
No. Thanks for your time. I had a good time, and good luck with your show. All
right. Appreciate it, Steve. So on behalf of Steve Fisk, this is Andy Dare signing off for the Andy Darer Show. Be sure to follow Andy on Twitter. That's at Andy Dare, ANDYDERER. And like our show on Facebook. That's facebook.com/The Andy Dare Show. Videos at youtube.com/Andrew Martin Dare. And it all leads back to the AndyDareShow.com. Support our show by supporting our sponsors. Uncle Bub's award-winning barbecue, Secondhand Mall, The Mandrate, and Amazon.com. Thank you so much for listening.